Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency, 504-556-0809 or davemietteINSagency.com.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We are live from our Pontchartrain Productions studios. And of course, we're going to cover all the home teams tonight. The New Orleans Saints, the LSU Tigers, the Tulane Green Wave. We hope to have time to touch on the Pelicans coaching staff search. All that coming up with our good friend Les East of CrestodySports.com and so much more. Les, welcome to the show as always. Good to have you back. How have you been, first of all?
Doing well, thanks. Good to be back.
And of course, busy time for you getting ready to get started with. Now we got the Saints, of course, college football ready to really kick off with the SEC this weekend. And of course, why don't you tell the folks about who you're writing for?
Yeah, it's good to finally have some live events happening again.
Yes.
Of course, I'm writing primarily for CrescentCitySports.com, and I'm really proud of the way we maintained the same level of original content, even when things were kind of slow.
True.
And now it's good that we have live events to write about more often. Of course, prep football will be coming up soon, which is a staple of ours. So looking forward to that, and also writing about LSU for Saturday down south. So the Tigers starting up and the Saints being underway are two big things for me.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the LSU Tigers on Saturday, and of course we'll talk a little bit about that in our second block. But we'll start off with the New Orleans Saints, and look, we'll do something a little bit different today. We'll get into the game in a moment, but the biggest topic this week has been Drew Brees. Look, just from my own, going back, looking at the games, I think a lot of us, if you're not at the game, you're in a situation where you're not seeing the whole picture here. And I talked about that on the radio show yesterday. We can see from the TV copy, if you're watching it, the line, you can see Brees maybe being uncomfortable. We're not seeing the all 22. We're not seeing the receivers. Are they getting off the jam? Are they running precise routes? Are they getting separation? And even Brees touched on this yesterday afternoon in his press conference, saying, look, there's a lot of moving parts to this when you talk about the offense, which is so true. But from, again, just the eye test, I see a guy that does not look comfortable in the pocket right now. And to me, that's the biggest thing, getting rid of the ball quickly, whether that is the fact that, again, maybe he doesn't trust the offensive line at this point, or that maybe, again, the receivers are in a situation where they're not doing what they need to do in terms of, their assignments. This thing is not in sync, but right now, Brees doesn't look like the same quarterback.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that, and I think you hit on it there with they're not in sync. I don't really by the school of thought that it's age related or arm strength related. Now, going down the field, yes, that the age and his arm strength maybe isn't quite what it used to be. But most of what we're seeing now is inaccuracy.
Yes.
And I hate to use that word because it seems to pin it all on him. And I think a lot of those other factors are in there. They're not in sync. You saw in the interception on Monday night, his footwork was messed up because of the pass rush.
Right.
There were other instances where an inaccurate throw resulted from bad footwork where there wasn't a rush.
Right.
And that was sloppy on his part. And that gets back to the comfort level. I think the absence of an off-season program, the absence of a mini camp, training camp not being totally normal, and no preseason, even though he doesn't play a lot in the preseason games. I think all of those things mean he is not as far along in the timing with his receivers as he normally would be. Emmanuel Sanders is a new guy.
Yes.
Traquan Smith the other night, who played pretty well, was taking Mike Thomas's role. So I'm assuming he was running some routes that aren't the ones he reps as often with Drew as he would when Mike is there.
True.
And so that all it takes is a little bit of timing to be off, and you see the ball not being where it's supposed to be, or the receiver and the ball not meeting properly. And then you get a pass rush involved. All of those things, I think, factor into it. And I think if you went back and looked at all the incompletions, you could probably find different combinations on different throws.
No,
so
I would agree.
I think it's all about being out of sync. If I know Drew all week long, he's going to be after practice and he's going to be working with the receivers. And when the receivers go in, he's probably going to be standing out there by himself working on his footwork and his timing. I mean, it's ridiculous the amount of time he puts in on little details. And I think at this point, they're not where they want to be, obviously. And I would expect things to get a little bit better at least on Sunday night. And you're going to see this thing gradually get better, because I do think it's a timing issue, not being in sync, and it's something that they can work through. It's not age-related to any significant degree.
Right. All right, let's talk about analytics. That's a big thing now in every single sport. There's no doubt that, again, the Saints are looking at the same analytics that the opposing team's defensive coordinators are looking at. This is no secret here. Breeze, his ability to get the ball downfield. Look, it's been an issue for a few years now, okay? But they've been able to overcome that. You got a situation, Mike Thomas gets 149 catches. There's a reason for that. Again, he is a guy that likes to do the shallow routes. Teams are playing this team now shallow. They're daring him to go over the top. But again, as we just spoke about, there's got to be a feeling of confidence in the receiver being where they need to be, but also in the offensive line. Now, again, there are some that grade out the offensive line and think the offensive line has been okay. Again, going by Breeze's body language, again, he is uncomfortable. He's not setting up in the pocket. There's something there in terms of, again, him, not having. And look, he's a guy that needs to have his mechanics perfect. When you go in your mind's eye and you think of Drew Brees at his best, stepping up into a pocket, okay, maybe not being able to see him, but again, he's coming out of that pocket and he's throwing. He's not a guy who can throw on the run effectively. He is a guy that needs to set his feet and throw. It's not something we're seeing a lot over the first two games. That is an issue there. And some of that, obviously, is maybe a way they're getting played as well. Teams just do not respect the long ball at this point.
I think that's true, and you're right. It's not something new. That's something that they've dealt with, and Mike had 149 catches last year, like you said, for a reason. They're doing a lot of underneath stuff, and I think there's a bit of a transition probably going on. Well, a couple of things. Let's talk about the offensive line first. Okay, Nick Easton starting in place of Cesar Ruiz because of the injury.
Yes.
And I haven't seen anything glaring from Nick Easton. I think he's doing okay. I think the line's doing okay. But I think the line as a unit is affected a lot by the unusual circumstances. You need continuity among the five people, and you need to be physical in preseason games to get to where you need to be to play a regular season game. And they haven't had that. And that's true of everybody in the league. I would suspect you're seeing some inconsistency on all offensive lines. So I think that's part of the issue. But I think also in game planning, Sean Payton and Pete Carmichael and Joe Lombardi and Drew Brees, I think, are all probably going through a transition period where they're trying to figure out how to react to the way teams have started playing them. The offense was inconsistent down the stretch last year.
Yes.
Passing game was not good against Minnesota in the playoff loss. So they're trying to figure out, we're not going to take a lot of 60-yard shots downfield, but we do have to loosen up the defense somehow. Right. How are the best ways to do that? Certainly I think Jared Cook can be in that mix. Drew said they had a couple of deep shots from Emmanuel Sanders the other night, but the Raiders had the right coverage to take it away. So I think they will try and get it up the field to those two guys in particular, but I think they're also going through trying to figure out different ways to game plan and play call to loosen up those defenses, and it's a work in progress. And Peyton got on himself after the Tampa Bay game, saying he did a terrible job of calling the game, and I think part of that was in the run game, and that's another thing, is trying to balance the run and the pass, and the passes down the field and the short game. So I think it's a work in progress, and again, like everything else, it's been affected by a strange offseason and preseason. So I guess what I would say is just take a deep breath, pause. I think they'll figure it out, and it will get better. But if we start seeing 2 or 3 more weeks where the passing game isn't getting better, then I would get concerned. Right. But at this point, I think they will work through it, and this passing game will get better, and this offense and this team will get better.
The narratives in the offseason. Any concern? Again, look, I was surprised. Look, I remember him saying he wanted to take a month to think about whether he was going to come back or not. Surprised when again, it was reported within the last couple of weeks that he was retiring. He was done. He was finished. And then all of a sudden he changed his mind, wanted to come back. Saints were interested in possibly bringing Tom Brady in, all that. And then there's the other narrative. Okay, all summer long, working with a trainer to try to get the long ball back. Look, when you saw Peyton Manning fall off the cliff, a lot of that had to do with the neck surgery. This is a guy that, for the most part, has been pretty much injury-free, with the exception of the shoulder when he was in San Diego and he came to New Orleans. He's had a few nicks here and there, but for the most part, he plays through them. There is a school of thought out there that if you start thinking about retiring, I don't care, in any business, if you're thinking about the retiring at that point, then you're almost out the door. Is that an issue, you think, with Brees right now, or do you think that was compartmentalized now and that's in the past, and he's trying? Because I was surprised when he said the other day, I'm playing on borrowed time here.
Yeah, that was an interesting choice of words.
Borrowed time.
Yeah, and I think that kind of leads into what my reaction was going to be. And I understand your point, and there may be some truth to the fact that, if it's somewhere in the back of your mind that this is going to be it could have been it last year.
Got the contract with NBC already set up when he walks out the door?
That's part of it. And I agree that could take a little bit away from the focus. But I think probably the larger point is what got him to that point, which is a recognition that he's 41 years old. He's not the player he used to be. He can't do everything as well as he's done it in the past. And so I think it was a recognition of where he's at in his ability to perform that is probably a bigger issue, but I think that did lead to his frame of mind that led him to seriously consider and even lean toward retirement, apparently, before coming back.
Let's talk about the big elephant in the room here, and that is, okay, if Brees is declining, and I don't think he is, okay? I think a lot of this has to do with, the offense, the instinct of the offense, the trusting of the offensive line. As I mentioned, it's hard unless you're at the game. You have a chance to be in the press box. You can see what's happening on development if you got the all-22. Again, anybody that's out there saying they know what the receivers are doing, if they're not at the game watching it live or they don't have the all-22, again, you're making it up as you go along because you're not seeing it on the TV copy. So it's hard for anybody to be able to say that with any certainty unless you're watching the film or you see it. But with that said, Jameis Winston is not ready. Jameis Winston, if you think Brees needs an offseason to get ready, this guy has no clue about the idiosyncrasy of this system that is, again, was built by Brees and Peyton for Brees. Taysom Hill, I would have liked to see him get some more snaps. He disappeared, and we'll get into that a little bit later. He disappeared against the Raiders. They didn't play him in the second half. I'd like to see him under center a little bit more. And again, but there's a question of whether if something was happening to Brees, is he ready? So for those that, again, are ready to push Brees out the door, you better take a hard look at the two guys behind him, and you better say, okay, what's your best chance of winning? It's still Drew Brees.
Sure, absolutely. And Jameis Winston was a great pickup.
Agreed.
And at some point down the road, he could be the successor to Drew Brees.
I agree with that as well.
But I agree with what you said. He's not ready to step in. And it would be foolish to say it's time to move on from Drew Brees, because we're not at that point. And I don't think we're close to that point. Taysom Hill, I think that kind of gets to another issue with the game planning and the play calling is they have a lot of unconventional things in their offense, with Taysom Hill being able to play under center, play in the shotgun, running back, fullback, tight end, split out, everything.
He made him want to dive the other day, which blew my mind.
And you got Deontay Harris is sort of an unconventional weapon. You have Ty Montgomery coming in, who's kind of like Alvin Kamara, who can split out and also be in the backfield. And so I think maybe there's just so much that they can use. And I think with Thomas being out, Peyton probably looked at all of those options. You saw the first play the other night was the sweep by Deontay Harris, which was a well-designed play and a good call to start the game. But I think they probably are looking at whether they can do a better job of zeroing in on what's going to work best, because they have so many possibilities with so many versatile weapons. And I think they're still going through that process now of figuring out, in terms of game plans and play calling, exactly what that makeup is going to be. And the absence of Mike Thomas just complicates everything.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And it was felt. But, and more than I thought it would be, because you just mentioned it. Peyton's got a buffet in front of him. He's got to figure out what he's going to eat first, right? Okay, what's the most appetizing thing on the buffet? And when you start talking about, obviously, again, he went to Kamara a lot. Didn't utilize Taysom Hill a lot the other night. Thought he would. A little bit of Montgomery. We saw a little bit more of Harris. Traquan Smith got a lot of, he had 80 yards at halftime, ended up with 86 yards. So that tells you something in terms of, what that there. And of course, Sanders, look, he's just going to take some time. When I talk about Jameis Winston taking time to learn this offense, it's the same deal with Sanders. When they tell you he's 80%, he's probably more than like 50% if they're telling you he's 80%. So again, there's a work in progress here. So I don't think there's any doubt that he missed Michael Thomas on Monday night against the Raiders.
Sure. And you can go talk to John Gruden and his defensive staff and ask them what it was like preparing for the Saints without Mike Thomas and what it would have been with Mike Thomas. So it's a huge difference, because most offenses, at least conventional offenses, are built around a stud running back. They used to be. And so everything is you run that guy inside, you run him outside, you run play action off the success you have running him. Well, the Saints do that with Michael Thomas. Okay, they get him involved. They set the tone by getting it to him, because it's so hard to defend him, especially one-on-one. And once you establish something with him, you play off of that like you would have done with a running back in a conventional offense. So not having him there just affects everything they do. And like you said with the buffet, Peyton's looking at it, and there's just so many possibilities that I think he needs to zero in on what's going to work best. And each week that's going to be dictated by who they're playing.
No doubt.
And the good news this week is that Green Bay, as well as it's played, its defense has not been great the first 2 weeks, and maybe they'll see some things this week.
Well, and you mentioned the running game, and again, that's kind of where I want to go next. Alvin Kamara had a great game. One thing that we liked about what we saw there was he's back. He's got the speed, he's got the fluidity, he's shifty. You could see, again, running the ball, catching the ball at the backfield, Kamara's back. I am a little surprised, and maybe I shouldn't be, that, again, not using Latavius Murray more, not using that power back. He got 3 carries in the game, 14 yards, his longest was at 8, and then they just went completely away from him. Taysom Hill comes in. You see a lot of him in the first quarter. All of a sudden, again, he disappears. You don't see him in the second half. So again, establishing the run, and not just with Kamara, but a powerful running game would also go a long way in helping Drew Brees. In terms of being able to, again, open up some more routes for him. Look, if you can run the ball effectively, teams are going to come in, they're going to have to try to stop that run, and then Brees has more of an opportunity to get to the intermediate or the long routes if they're there.
Yeah, I agree. And the Murray thing is a little bit surprising because they came out with a commitment to the run.
Yes.
And they did that with Kamara and did it to great effect.
And they did it the week before. And they were committed to the run the week before.
Mm-hmm. And so that's a little bit curious, but I think that kind of gets back to what we were talking about before, and just that there are so many possibilities that there's a possibility that you will wind up with a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of the other thing, and maybe you should be focusing on one or more aspects a little bit more.
Right.
But that's a feeling out process that happens over the course of a game, but it also happens as an offense evolves over the course of a season. This is 2 games.
Right.
I'm sure they'll have a different approach this week, see what works, and this is an evolution that's going to take some time. And the track record of the people involved tells me that it's going to get better, maybe not as quickly as everybody wants,
Right.
but it's going to get better.
Right.
It's a long haul, so let's see what happens against Green Bay and decide whether we want to panic then or not.
I think a lot of people got caught up in the narrative that this is a veteran team and they don't need the off-season seasoning, okay, the workouts. Maybe a little mistake on the part of Sean Payton to say, hey, we don't need virtual off-season workouts. You guys go get in shape. You know the system. Obviously, they were virtual workouts for the guys that were newcomers, okay? But again, that was virtual classrooms. Maybe in hindsight, maybe he doesn't do that. But again, I would say the same as you. This is a talented team. This is a team right now that is very undisciplined. And this is a team, honestly, that needed the off-season workouts, the training camps, the mini camps, the preseason, and the ability, for a guy like Brees to practice against another team where we see him get a lot of reps.
Right.
Okay, so all those things now have kind of come to fruition when you look at the first 2 games. And maybe, again, as we've seen in the past, a team that doesn't start off quickly, because that's been the MO for this team, that maybe, again, it will be a little bit longer till you start to see this team get in sync. With that said, the main problem they're having right now is the lack of discipline. And you cannot be in a situation where you're the most penalized team in the NFL.
Right.
10 penalties for 129 yards in this game. The week before, 6 penalties, 119 yards, 248 yards in penalties on 16 accepted penalties over the last 2 games. That's not winning football. They are killing drives on offense. They are extending drives for the other offense when they're on defense.
Yeah, the penalties are a problem. And let me say one other thing real quick about something you touched on there. We had one of our conference calls with Sean Payton when they were sort of getting into training camp, when everybody first arrived. And you could tell he was not happy with the restrictions on training camp that the Management Council and the Players Association worked out.
14 padded practices where they could hit.
Right.
That was it.
And he said they didn't take the coaches' recommendations. So it was a big adjustment for him trying to get, like it was for all coaches, trying to get the team ready within those parameters. And I think that's something that was an adjustment period that probably factors in here somewhere along the way. But to your point about the penalties, the most disturbing ones obviously are the secondary penalties, the holding, the pass interference. There have just been way too many.
And they got
of
a
those.
Reputation now.
Right. Yeah, that doesn't help either.
Right.
Now, I would say that, especially on Monday night, you could go back and find 2 or 3 or 4 of those calls where you could say, well, that was a bad call, or that they could have let that go.
The one with Janoris Jenkins at the end, that came from the back judge, not the side judge that was right on the play.
Yeah.
Okay. There was the block, the double block for Sanders on the sidelines. I thought was a bad call. I thought both of them were excellent blocks. Okay. No, I agree with you. There are a handful of penalties out there that you can look at and say, that's kind of ticky-tack.
Right. And had they let those go, the numbers would look a lot different. We're only looking at 2 games.
Right.
So it's a big percentage of your total one. So I'm not sure that the numbers to this point are an indication of where this team is headed. But nonetheless, they have to do a better job of avoiding penalties. And it is an experienced group. The secondary should be one of the strengths of the team. They have a lot of depth there.
No doubt.
And it hasn't performed to that level so far. That one offensive sequence where they had 3rd and 30 or whatever, and they had 3 or 4 plays in a row. They had penalties. That was terrible. But overall, I don't know that the offensive penalties have been as bad as what we've seen from the secondary on defense.
But they have stagnated drives. There's especially again when you're talking about the struggles within the passing game right now. You know, when you're putting Breeze in a position now where it's it's 2nd and 20. Okay, or I mean, those are hurting, and there's no doubt about that. They have to clean that up. And look, in the past, this has been a team for the most part that is not overly penalized. They're a pretty disciplined team. Yeah. And again, it goes back to the narrative that was out there with everybody. This team doesn't need training camp. No, this team obviously, like every other team, needed training camp because these are some of the things you have to clean up. The other thing that really stuck out to me in the loss to the Raiders was, again, the time of possession. Now, both teams had 9 possessions, okay? But the Raiders scored on 6 of their last 7 possessions. The only one they didn't score on was the fumble by Richard, okay? 36-18 to 23-42. That just doesn't happen to the Saints. The Saints are the team that usually dominates possession.
Right. That is not going to be a winning formula for any team, but especially for a Saints team that's so good on offense and possesses the ball so well. Probably the single biggest factor, I think, in that game was their inability to slow down the tight end.
Waller went nuts. To me, Demario Davis was the best player on him that day. But yet, again, he's also the best linebacker on the field. So if you got him on Waller, obviously they're going to try to pick on other things. But no, very surprised. Was it 13 of 16 targets, over 100 yards for Waller?
And so many of those converted 3rd downs and kept possessions going and led to that time of possession stat. One other thing I wanted to say about the penalties real quick is that this is not something that's obvious, and yet I think it's probably a factor. No, there were no preseason games for the officials.
That's true. That's a great point. So and the first I've heard that, the first person I've heard bring that, right?
There at game speed, getting back into the rhythm and adjusting to the new rules figuring out what can and can't go. And so I think probably the officials will do a better job later in the season than they're doing right now.
Excellent point. And the first I've heard anybody say that, honestly. Nobody's talked about the officials not having an off season, but it's so true because they get a chance to go to the training camps, work with the teams, and they're honing their skills as well. Because remember, it is a part-time job. They're not full-time officials. They're not doing this year-round. That's the other part of it. By the way, you mentioned Waller, 12 for 16 and 103 yards for him. And that's another thing. When you come back to the coaching, and look, first I said this going into the game. Anybody that knows this Saints team outside of the division, if there's a coach that knows it, it's John Gruden. You've heard Gruden for the years and years and years gushing about this Saints team. When he was on NFL Network, when he was on ESPN, breaking things down, bringing the Saints offense in, he knows Peyton very well. They coached together. Obviously, he had a heck of a game plan for the Saints and executed it flawlessly. And just the inability to be able to adjust, and when the Saints did adjust, especially on defense, those adjustments not working.
Yeah, and I think you would have to say that Gruden and his staff did a better job than Peyton and his staff at adjusting during the game. Now, Peyton and his staff may have had a better game plan because the Saints started off so well, but Gruden and the Raiders figured out what they needed to do to get it turned around. Somewhere in the second quarter, things started to turn, and then they just got better and better, and the Saints got worse and worse. So you got to give Gruden and his staff credit for that.
And then again, the guys that you would really count on to really step up, again, a lot of those guys didn't have really good games, okay? And especially on the defensive side. Look, I talked about it going into the game. Cam Jordan's going against a third-string tackle. He was going to have a feast. It was the worst game I've ever seen Cam Jordan play. I mean, you don't see Cam Jordan in a situation where the only thing you can point to him doing something in the game was the horse collar.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, he just was not effective at all. And then, of course, then you look at the linebacking core right now. They're not even using the Sam linebacker. Okay, whether it's Bond or Ellis, they're going with a nickel dime package. Obviously, they don't have a lot of faith in that Sam linebacker right now. And I've said this before on the radio show and on this show. For those that don't think there's a drop-off from A.J. Klein to Anzalone, you're not watching the game. Anzalone was a physical player who, again, not only could rush the passer, he could stand up against the run, and he was a guy that, again, could cover in pass coverage. Anzalone is pretty good in pass coverage, but yet he wasn't even effective against Waller or getting any of the backs out the backfield, and he's not as physical of a player as A.J. Klein is against the run.
Right. And, linebacker is a position that probably we've known all along.
Yes.
Didn't have quite as much depth as most of the positions on a very deep team. Demario Davis is as good a defensive player as there is in the NFL. But after that, there's some uncertainty, and the depth isn't great. So that's an area of concern. But you were talking about the key players. Peyton said after the game, some of our best players are not going to enjoy watching this film.
So true.
And rightfully, he didn't name anyone. I would guess Cam Jordan was certainly one of those.
Yes.
Drew Brees was one of
Absolutely.
those. Maybe Marshawn Lattimore was one of those.
So.
And Malcolm Jenkins
He's
certainly
where
had to
I'm
be
going
one
next.
of those players. So it was a bad game for some of their most important players.
Yes.
And no team can afford to have that.
Let's talk about Malcolm Jenkins because, and maybe I'm biased, I was a Von Bell fan. I thought Von Bell was getting better every single year. And I thought that, again, it was maybe a little bit of a reach to go get an aging defensive back simply because your defense is not getting lined up correctly. Look, we've seen at least 3 to 4 busts in that defensive backfield over the first 2 games. So again, that thing of that narrative that Jenkins is going to come in and all of a sudden there'll be no bust. No, there's bust right now. The issue is, again, his ability to cover, which has always been an issue. And I say this all the time. When you go back in your mind's eye, you think about the Saints against the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Saints needed a first down. Where did they go? They went right at Malcolm Jenkins. And they went continual at Malcolm Jenkins to the point that Malcolm Jenkins had some expletives for Sean Payton on the way out of that game, if you remember. Okay, so not a guy that, again, is a great cover guy. And then you wonder if down the line here, if maybe they got the guy that is a descending player based on what we've seen the first 2 weeks. Now, again, I don't want to throw the baby out of the bathwater here. He's still a guy that's still probably learning this system, but he doesn't look like the same player he was in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I would agree with that. In fact, I tweeted during the game that it's very early in the season, but to this point, he has not played as well as Von Bell played last year.
Right.
And I think you're right. A lot of the reason he was brought in had to do with being smart, understanding the defense, getting everybody lined up properly. When he was here the last time, Dennis Allen wasn't the defensive coordinator. So there's going to be a transition period before he's able to utilize that knowledge of the system and his ability to get people lined up. So he's not able to do that to this point. I think they were willing to accept an aging player for that benefit, and the benefit hasn't gotten here yet. The aging is here. I'm not ready to say he's descending at this point, but he is aging, and until he gets caught up mentally, there's going to be some bumps in the road, and we've seen quite a few, especially on Monday night.
There was no doubt. And then again, you throw in the fact that Marcus Williams still can't tackle. That's an issue. You cannot tackle high. You're the safety. At the end of the day, you're the last line of defense. You have to be able to tackle, and he's just not a tackler, a great tackler. We've seen it too many times. We've seen him, again, with the situation with the Minnesota Miracle. We saw Kittle last year while you're dragging him down the sidelines. You know, he had a whiff this past week where he went high on I think it was Jacobs, and got tossed like a rag doll. You mentioned Marcus Lattimore. I mean, he's got to play. He seems like he plays down to the competition. It's almost like you got to tell him he's playing against Mike Evans every week, okay? Because he just doesn't have the same intensity. And then Janoris Jenkins, you're going to get what you get with Janoris Jenkins. Him, much like Eli Apple, are very physical players on the outside. So it's going to come down to the officiating crew when it comes down to that. But all I heard was this is a great secondary. Well, I mean, are they going to be in a situation where pass interference is going to be the cost of doing business with this secondary?
Well, it could be. You would hope not. But at this point, that has definitely been the case for 2 weeks.
Yes.
They're going to have to adjust to that. I think they have enough talent there that they should be able to make that adjustment. and not be beating themselves as badly as they have been with those penalties. But until they get it straightened out, you have to wonder whether that is going to be the cost of doing business. My guess would be that it won't be, but until it stops being that, you have to wonder.
Right. Les East is with us. When we come back, we'll touch on Saints Green Bay, and then we're going to get into the LSU Tigers as they start their season against the Mississippi State Bulldogs. And then we'll talk about Tulane, the debacle that was, again, the loss against Navy, and we'll look forward to USM. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Our guest tonight, Les East of CrescentCitySports.com. Let's hear from our underwriters.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Experiencing rough weather with a bad roof can be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be.
Suburban Roofing, because when it comes to roofing, there is a difference.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight, Les East of CrescentCitySports.com is our guest. We'll finish up our talk on the Saints, and then we'll jump into the LSU Tigers next. Green Bay coming in. You're talking about a team that has a prolific offense. Look, they're hitting on all cylinders right now. Mm-hmm. They are first in the NFL in rushing offense, 6th in passing yards. They've got the most points in the NFL over the first 2 weeks. They are playing lights out when it comes to offense right now. Talk about this game in the Dome. We found out today 750 family members and staff members will be allowed in the Dome. Other than that, fans will not be allowed in the Dome, which is, again, look, you know, that's to the detriment of the Saints not having fans in that Dome. You know, again, this is one of the teams that it really affects not having fans at the game because of what these fans do in terms of helping the defense and, of course, picking up the offense.
Well, the absence of fans will make it so much easier for Aaron Rodgers and his offensive line to perform. That's a significant difference in this game, not compared to what it would be on a Sunday night.
Yes.
If you had a normal Saints crowd. So that's a big deal. This is the most balanced offense in the NFL right now. It's only 2 weeks, but it's certainly not a fluke with Aaron Rodgers and the players he has around him. Jones, the running back, had a career-high yards against Detroit on Sunday, scored 3 touchdowns. First week they did it mostly with the pass, last week mostly with the run. If they're able to run it effectively whenever they want and throw it effectively whenever they want, as they have these first 2 weeks, they are very, very difficult to beat. And not having the crowd noise there to slow them down is going to make it hard for the Saints.
Yep, there's no doubt. You know, it's going to be hard. Normally you would say home, Sunday night, you could pick the Saints. I think it's hard to pick them right now because, again, I don't know what they're Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. I don't know what team is going to show up on Sunday night. Is it going to be a disciplined team that we're going to see this offense in sync, or is it going to be the undisciplined play that we've seen over the last 2 weeks and Breeze running for his life, or at least not feeling comfortable in the pocket?
Right, and you don't know. The one thing that would probably be the most encouraging thing is that Green Bay's defense has not played great the first 2 weeks, gave up a fair number of points and yards. So if the Saints can get their passing game in rhythm, it could turn into a shootout, and the Saints might be able to win that way. But I would say at this point, Green Bay looks like the better balanced offense and the more complete team, and playing essentially on a neutral field, it would be very hard to pick the Saints.
One thing that did concern me less in the game against the Las Vegas Raiders was the Saints got out physical on both sides of the ball. It's rare when you see this team getting out physicaled, where they look like they got out physicaled by, again, what I thought was an inferior Las Vegas Raiders line on offense, and defensively, again, they put a lot of pressure on Brees throughout the game.
They did, and I was that surprised me a little bit because I thought in the first quarter the Saints had the better of it on both lines of scrimmage.
There's no doubt.
And I don't know why that changes once a game's underway. When you're bringing it and you have them back on their heels, and you have a lead. I don't really understand how that changes, but I mean, football is a strange game. Things change on a dime, and that's what happened there. I would expect that they will come out with an attitude on Sunday night.
Let's hope they do. LSU, first chance to see the Tigers. The All-SEC schedule begins on Saturday against Mississippi State at Tiger Stadium. 25% occupancy at Tiger Stadium. That's a CBS game, 2:30. That is nationally televised. It is the beginning of the Miles Brennan era. Of course, we know Eric Gilbert will start at the tight end position. We're hearing that it's going to be a three-headed monster at running back. I was surprised to hear that this week out of Coach Joe. Curry, Davis, and Davis Price and Embry will all see significant time. Something that we thought we'd see last year, but we saw heavy dose of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. The question mark right now is the young receiving core that has to come in, after McMath and after Terrence Marshall, and then the offensive line is kind of a question mark right now. You've had a chance to cover this team as best as you can, without having to see practice. Give me your synopsis. Take offense first, and then we'll go into defense. With all the defections we've seen, how good is this team?
Well, I think they're going to be good on offense. First off, let's make it clear they are not going to be nearly as good as they were last year.
That's going to be
okay.
Right.
The planets aligned for a once-in-a-lifetime offense. Okay, so let's take it out of the context of last year. I think Miles Brennan's going to be fine. I think he's going to be a good player, one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC. I wouldn't call him a Heisman contender like some people have. But I think he'll be good. He'll be fine. The running backs, I don't think anyone's going to separate themselves the way Edwards-Helaire did last year. So I think you will see 2 and 3 guys used a lot because their skill sets aren't identical.
True.
And I think Chris Curry will be the first guy you'll see on Saturday, and you'll see more of him initially unless somebody else proves they deserve to be the number one back. The receivers, I'm really eager to see because there's a lot of talent there. Orgeron talked about Kayshon Boutte this week,
yes, he did.
Highly touted, and you mentioned Marshall and McMath, the two veteran players, and then you also have Coy Moore from Rummel. And the guy, I think he's kind of like the middle child here. He's not the most experienced, he's not the newcomer, but Trey Palmer is a guy who has a lot of talent, who doesn't get as much attention. I think he could be a factor. And, of course, Eric Gilbert is the most highly touted tight end ever to arrive
and more
at
than
LSU.
just a tight end, right? He's a guy that's going to play multiple positions on the offense.
They talk about Calvin Johnson, who was a tight end in a wide receiver's body. This guy is a wide receiver in a tight end's body, which I guess is the same thing. But the key to me is going to be the offensive line. I think it's going to be a very good offensive line.
Okay.
But I don't know if it's going to be that good early on because it's almost an entirely new line.
True.
And again, just like the Saints, the continuity, the physicality haven't been there. Mississippi State is always physical on both lines of scrimmage. Mike Leach is known for his passing offense, but at Washington State he had very physical defensive lines. So I don't think this is a great line for that group to go against right out of the gate. So the offensive line, I think, will be a bit inconsistent early. They'll get better. The offense will be fine, I think, over time. We just have to remember that this is the 2020 offense. Don't look at them compared to 2019. Now, the defense.
Can I ask before we go to defense?
Sure.
Influence of Scott Linehan on this offense, you think?
Oh, I think he'll be fine. I think you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix
Right.
it. And, you know, Steve Ensminger is a smart guy who's
Yes.
been coaching a long
True.
time. And let's remind people, Steve Ensminger is the offensive
Everybody wants to
coordinator.
say it's Joe Brady. It was Ensminger.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, they're going to tweak what they did last year to fit the personnel they have and what Linehan believes in. And that's the smart thing to do. But I think he'll fit in fine. I think he and Ensminger have both coached for so long.
Yes.
And they both played college football, and you know, Ensminger played in the NFL. You know, they know what's going on. They're smart guys. They'll be able to work together, and they know they're not going to be trying to put their fingerprints on this offense. They're going to take what Brady did that worked, and they're going to tweak it. And you know, so I think that was a smart hire. I think that'll be fine.
Yes.
Those two. Now, as far as the defense, you know, so many changes there.
Right.
But,
And by the way, Tyler Shelvin is not coming back. Right. He put that out today on social media. He is going to opt out. He's going to stay opt out despite of all the rumors of maybe him coming back. So, you know, you're going to go with the horses that you got right now in the stable.
yeah, and that's a big loss.
That is a huge loss.
He was going to be a big playmaker
Yes.
for them. And the defensive line's a good place to start because Pelini plays a 4-3, Aranda played a 3-4, even though those things kind of morph from time to time. But one of the things they liked about going to the 4-3 was the amount of depth they have on the defensive line. Well, they've lost Tyler Shelvin. Right. They've lost a lot of their depth. McClendon left. Yes. Justin Thomas left. They had a suspension there a couple of weeks ago. So they're down 4 or 5 linemen from what they expected.
Neil Farrell has come back.
Yeah, Neil Farrell has come back. Not sure how many snaps he'll be ready to play because of his conditioning, but that definitely helps. They already, before the defections, their depth at tackle was going to include some true freshmen. So
Highly touted true freshmen.
yeah, very talented.
Right.
And so I still think they'll be good on the defensive line, but they're not going to be as experienced or as deep as they thought. I do think Pelini's approach, being more aggressive, keeping it simpler than Aranda did, will allow for a more aggressive front. Aranda, I think, made them think too much sometimes, and they lost their instinctiveness to some degree. So I think the scheme fits what they have very well, but they're not going to have the depth that they had hoped to have. Totally new linebacking core. I think they'll be fine there. They have a lot of talent, but again, an adjustment period. Damon Clark, I think, will be a leader. He has played a lot, even though he's not a returning starter technically. And then I think the strength early on will be the secondary. Fairly young back there, but boy, there's so much talent, so much depth there. I think the secondary is going to be really good. If they can generate a pass rush consistently with the front four, it's going to be hard to pass on this defense, and I think they're going to create turnovers.
Big test. You talked about Mike Leach coming in with that air raid offense. So he's got a guy that, again, is a grad transfer from Stanford, KJ Costello, who, again, has run this offense. So, again, it's not going to be unfamiliar. They've already got a pretty good running back in their stable, Kalen Hill, who can run the ball. And you talked about the physicalness of their offensive line and defensive lines. This is a test, again, when you start talking about having to come out of the gate playing against this offense. But you've had the offseason to prepare.
I think it's a very good test for LSU. You know, Mike Leach, I believe, has been a head coach for 18 seasons, and in 10 of those seasons, his offense has led the nation in passing yards. Okay, so that's a challenge right there. Not that necessarily means the best passing game, but it does mean one that's going to test your defense. And he has probably the most polished quarterback he's ever had in KJ Costello. You say good ones, but this guy's played a lot of games in a good program against good competition. So that's going to be a challenge for the defense right there. They will have balance with the running game. Hill is a very good running back. So, and Mike Leach is a good coach.
He really is.
He's not a gimmicky guy. No. Okay, the air raid offense is kind of gimmicky, but he has good, physical, sound, well-rounded teams. So this isn't just a fluky thing. This is a good coach with a good program. And I think it's going to be a good challenge for LSU. I don't think people should expect this to be like last year and think, oh, this is going to be like going to the circus.
Right.
So, this is going to be so much fun, and they're going to win so easily. This is going to be a tough, hard-fought game. If LSU gets out of there with a win, that's a good day.
No,
I don't care if it's by 1 point or 20 points.
Especially again with the influence of COVID-19 in the offseason. Even though again Orgeron has said that they've hit and they've been physical in camp, you cannot simulate games, especially SEC games. And look, this is an SEC schedule. We talk about this all the time, how physical the SEC is. Well, you're playing a schedule of all SEC teams. So, I mean, again, that when you compare that to with what other conferences are going to have to do, this is going to be a tough road, not just for LSU, but for every SEC team.
Absolutely. And we talked about the Saints losing the home field. Well, LSU's doing the same.
No doubt.
25,000, okay, but that's not Tiger Stadium.
That's not
75,000 empty seats in Tiger Stadium. That's never happened for an LSU game in the history of the building.
It'll be like when I used to go to the Purple and Gold game back when I was a kid. When you had a scattered people all over the stadium. That's what it's going to feel like.
And now one thing I will say is this is the first SEC game for Mike Leach.
Yes.
And he knows what the SEC is all about, and he's preparing his team for it. But at the same time, he coached in the Big 12, he coached in the Pac-12, and until you're actually up front coaching in the trenches against the SEC, it's going to be a work in progress for him as well.
Speaking of a work in progress, the Tulane Green Wave. Look, this was supposed to be a coming out party on Saturday. ABC, nationally televised. You had Navy coming off a 55-3 thrashing from BYU, in which the coach admitted they didn't hit during the off season workouts, and again felt like that his team needed to be more physical. Tulane jumps out to a 24-0 lead. It looks like they're dominating this thing. They're going to take this thing, and there's going to be a party on Willow, and look. The bottom fell on them. The adjustments that were made by Navy, the physicality, and then more importantly, again, the big problem that we're seeing right now is the quarterback position. And there's just no other way to look. We've talked about it the entire offseason. Tulane will go as far as the quarterback will take them. Well, as of right now, Keon Howard has shown that he is an excellent athlete, and maybe he's got some experience because again he's played some, but he's not an accurate quarterback. And you got to be able to have an accurate, got to be able to throw the football in today's football. It's not the wishbone. You can't do 3 yards in a cloud of dust. You got to be able to throw the ball. 10 for 25, 108 yards, 1 interception, 4.3 yard average on his passes. And Les, I'm not trying, this is a college kid, okay? But I'm not trying to make fun or make light of this, but I have never seen a 11.8 QBR rating. 11.8. They got some issues at quarterback right now. And the question is Willie Fritz going to be willing to be able to allow this kid to try to learn under fire? Do you have that type of time? Or will you have to go to one of the freshmen, either Justin Ibieta or Michael Pratt? And that's going to be one of the questions going forward as they go to Southern Miss this week. Because you can't be in a situation where you go into a game and the defense already knows that you don't have a passing game.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that the quarterback position right now is the key to Tulane's success or lack thereof going forward. And it has to be in Willie Fritz's mind how long he can continue to go with this if the play does not improve. Now, I thought Howard made just enough plays down the stretch at South Alabama to win that game. I thought he made a few plays early against Navy that helped them get that 24-0 lead. But on balance, it's nowhere near where it needs to be. The consistency has to get better. The accuracy has to get better. And you're right, they don't have a lot of time to stick with this. If he doesn't start producing better and more consistently, they have to take a long, hard look at one of the freshmen. Because if the quarterback play from Keon Howard does not get better, they're going to lose more games than they win. And this is a team that expects to have a winning season. So Saturday, I think, is going to be a very big day for the team and for Keon Howard to see if they take a step forward and maybe can start feeling more confident about him, or if they have to take a long, hard look at what they have to do for the season going forward.
Well, at some point you got to say, okay, we want to try to win because we want to continue the bowl streak, but if this guy's not getting it done, then I just got to go one of the freshmen. And I'm just going to have to live with it under fire here at this point. I mean, I understand he didn't want to do that in the Navy game, wet field, but look, both teams played on that sloppy field. Tulane got out. It wasn't just all on Howard. Tulane got out physicaled in the second half on both sides of the football. And again, look, that's on the coaching staff as well. Much as I like Willie Fritz, I think he's got a great coaching staff. It's on those guys for not getting these guys prepared to go out for the second half and understand that the midshipmen were not going to quit, and they didn't quit, and they handed it to Tulane in the second half.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly what the adjustment was, but you could see Tulane dominated that first half.
Absolutely.
The defense totally dominated Navy. Navy couldn't do anything on offense. The first possession of the third quarter for Navy, they immediately had openings to run the football. They did something different to create that opportunity, and they got Tulane back on its heels. Tulane could never get it turned back the other way. So let's not put it all on Keon Howard, because they were out physical. Navy did turn it around at the start of the third quarter, and this is the United States Naval Academy.
Right.
These are prideful people.
They're not quitting.
Who lost 55-3
Right.
and were getting beat 24-0. You know that they are going to come out swinging,
Right.
and that they are going to be they're going to fight with their pride and everything they have, discipline, and Tulane wasn't up to it when they came back.
That was the most frustrating thing for me, Les, because I'm sitting there and I know they're coming out and they're not giving up. It's not. They're not going to be they're going to give you everything they got in the second half based on what happened against BYU and what happened in the first half. And Tulane was not. It was almost like Tulane thought they could coast in the second half, and it was ball game at halftime, and it wasn't.
And I think that's, again, it's still a young program.
True.
In terms of this coaching staff's program and young teams. And when you haven't experienced a lot of success and you get up 24-0, it's kind of easy to think, oh, we got this one in the bag. Oh, who do we go against next week to get to 3-0?
Exactly.
And I think probably some immaturity factored into the way that second half goes. And when it starts to turn in the other direction, sometimes it's hard to turn it back.
Right, especially when you're not generating offense, and they weren't at all. And then again, you get maybe a little down because you're not, get the passing game's not going the way it should be. But that was a total debacle by the entire team, not just Keelan Howard, from coaching staff all the way down to the last man for the WAVE. Take on USM this week. What do you expect?
I think they'll play well. I think they'll bounce back. I think this is a game they need to win. And I don't think it'll be easy. I think it'll probably go to the wire, but I think Tulane will find a way to win it.
Well, they need to. They really do. Good news about Willie Fritz getting the contract extension, the stability within the program. That's a great thing. But again, they got to take the next step. Look, he knew it was going to be difficult this season without having a veteran signal caller. Yeah. He went out and tried to get that with graduate transfers. It just didn't work out. Yeah. Hopefully, again, either Keon Howard, Pratt, or Ibieta will be able to get it done behind center.
Yeah, I think they have the right guy as their coach.
Yes.
But I don't think that you can expect this program to go up in big steps.
Right.
It's going to be slow. It's going to be gradual. But I do think they're headed in the right direction. It's just going to take a little longer to get to where everybody wants to be.
Les East, CrestCitySports.com, Saturday Down South. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Eric.
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. You got two viewings on the Deuce, WLAE-TV 2, 10 p.m. on Thursday night, also 2 a.m. on Saturday morning. Also on Pelican Sports Television, 9 o'clock on Friday night, also 5 p.m. on Saturday afternoon. So plenty of ways to be able to see the program, and also the WLAE-TV YouTube page. You can see it there, as well as ericasher.com. You can catch me on the radio at 106.1 FM, WRKN. That is 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. weekdays. You can listen live at ericasher.com, the TuneIn Radio app, and also the iHeart Radio app is where you can also listen to the program. Special thanks again to our underwriters for supporting this program. Please support those underwriters. Also to Les East and to the WLE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Tommy Fairley, Tommy O'Connor, and my director, William Hill. I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for watching. We'll check you out for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Be sure to check us out online. And of course, check me out on the radio on 106.1 FM. Until next week, thanks for watching.